This is a sway skills around Enneagram intelligence centers and communication styles. And we're taking a larger teaching and condensing it down. Um, you all know me. This is my husband and my two goat kids, which will also be temporarily relocating for a couple years as we move to Iowa City. The basic Enneagram. So a lot of people who are here most likely know about what the Enneagram is, but the basic Enneagram is just saying, hey, this is a map of human personality. And it is teaching us how to go from, okay, I'm wearing a mask, I have this ego that's been developed, and how do I start to take it off and really live into my more authentic and true self? So most people know the Enneagram by this symbol, which is right here, and by the fact that there are 9 core archetypes. So there's these 9 personality styles, and each person has one, and you are one person your whole life. And I need to admit somebody. Here we go. So you're not, an 854 or a 967, even though some test results will list. They're just kind of saying this is what you scored, but really you're one dominant type your whole life. Additionally, wherever you are on the Enneagram map, so the symbol is the Enneagram map, you have access to your neighboring numbers. So if I am a type 8, I have access to type 9 characteristics, and I have access to type 7 characteristics, and those are known as our wings. And then also using the 8 as an example, I have connection to the 2 and connection to the 5. And that's like the roads, if you will, if you using this tool as a map. The 9 shapes Enneagram, essentially when I first started teaching, I got really annoyed at all the archetypes and stereotypes of the Enneagram. Most likely the type 4s I got annoyed with. So I created these shapes just to be, to represent bringing the mysteriousness of art and interpretation into these workshop settings. So they all have a lot of intention with how they were developed, but they're just also used as visual aids. Just so y'all know. So what does the Enneagram explain? Well, it's the story of our human nature and nurture. So it talks about our biology, our epigenetics, and our ancestral background. It's getting at our instinctual self. So recent studies in epigenetics are actually showing that what our ancestors experienced are in our DNA and shapes our DNA, which is starting to explain anxiety and depression and other mental illnesses, and then also parts of our temperament that show up today that it's like, I have everything I need. I have a house, I have a bank account where I can go out and like buy food. I've never experienced hunger, but since I have this, using Enneagram theory, dominant self-preservation instinct, I am always like, okay, where's the food? And is there enough food? And does everybody have food? I'm very like food and like water oriented. It's like, I want to survive. And perhaps, and I actually know this is true, my ancestors are from a developing country in Serbia and experienced war, and they didn't have a lot. And I actually have people that are still over there. But it's essentially explaining this nature, so our biology, and then nurture, which most Enneagram theorists do talk about. And this is what we're going to talk about more today, is the nurture part. So the first 5 years of our lives, psychologists agree that that is when temperament is really like honed in. So whether you believe humans are born with a blank slate or not, after the age of 5, it's like your personality is kind of how it's always going to be. And so when we get older and the decades past, we have these coping strategies. And that's what the Enneagram is talking about. It's like, this is how I've learned to cope. This is how I've learned to communicate with the world. And we want to learn how to go beyond that. So the Enneagram is a map that teaches us how to go beyond that. And I know this is so much context, but it really sets the stage for how to use this tool. So ethics in the Enneagram, just remember that when you're bringing this into your organization, language is important, using it in safe relationships is key. and knowing that it's a way for an individual to do their own work and not just like you to point out other strengths and weaknesses. Um, and then how not to use the Enneagram. Try not to type people or tell people what they are. Don't have it be the main lens that you view people through. I think that's, sorry, we have more people coming in, but they opted out. Don't have that be the main way that you look at people, because I mean, you all know that that's just more relationally lazy. Like, oh, this person is a 3, so I know all these things about them because they're a type 3. It's like, no, that might be 0.003% of what makes up who they are. Maybe a very accurate 0.003%, but it's still, like, you want to engage with the Enneagram with curiosity. So I always start with ethics and etiquette, with bringing the Enneagram into any space, not just an organization. So what we are going to focus in on, and I'm hoping to have more dialogue than just me talking, is this intelligence centers piece. So what I really like about the Enneagram is the conversation around intelligence centers. So the Enneagram comes in threes. There's these 3 symbols, which I just kind of glazed over, but the circle, triangle, and hexad. And then those 3 symbols are divided into 3. You have your body types, your head types, and your heart types. And so what this is talking about is there are 3 types that have this kinesthetic intelligence, or this gut response to life, this instinctual intelligence that really shows up in their body. And then there's 3 types who are more prone or have a preference for this cerebral or mental acuity. They have a certain way of processing information and data and stories that they prefer and have learned to communicate with. And then 3 types who are more emotionally oriented. So they have emotional intuition and carry a lot of sadness and grief and are attuned with others' emotions. And they have this heart intelligence. And one of the reasons that I like this theory is because I think in the West that we've really valued historically the head types. So like academia, people who can remember information, because we used to not have Google. So those people who could had this mental acuity, like that was such a value. And perhaps in more recent years, we've brought on Eastern practices about yoga and breathing and connecting to our body. And also in more recent years, it's like, well, also emotional intelligence seems to be important. And more people are going to counseling. And there's this talk around being emotionally intelligent. I like this because it really shows that there's a type of balance, because we have all 3. Obviously, we all have bodies. Obviously, we all have feelings, and obviously, we all have our thinking center. And depending on where you are in the Enneagram, this is part of how to use the Enneagram as a map. Because perhaps you've been using your heart center and been in the heart center just trapped for a long time. And it's time to use some of that objectivity and pull the wisdom from head types. Or perhaps you are, maybe you're a body type, but you keep on, like, you're trying to be a head type. And maybe it's time to come back to where you are housed on the Enneagram in your home and say, you know what, I've never fully appreciated my body and I trusted that gut. I know it's there, but I need to relearn that. Or, a head type that needs to learn how to trust their own thoughts. Maybe they haven't trusted them. And that could come for a myriad of reasons. This is a graph that's just showing some work done by Beatrice Chestnut, who is the leading Enneagram teacher in the world right now. And she did her PhD around Margaret Mahler's object relations theory and overlapped Enneagram theory with other psychology theories. So this is just extracting some of that to show, oh, seems like these body, heart, and head also overlap with our 3 core emotions, or our basic early development needs, and Karen Horney's strategy of against, toward, and away, which maybe some of you have heard of these before doing your own work or working with a therapist. And the one that's we're going to just briefly go over today is Mahler stages. So these are the subphases and Mahler stages of childhood development. And it's almost like a time graph where we start on the body types, move toward head, and then end on heart. And that's how it overlaps with developmental theory, according to Margaret Mahler and Beatrice Chestnut. So you start the graph by looking at body types, 1, 9s, and 8s. And these types had a sensitivity toward holding. So holding happens when the baby is born to the first year of life, and they start to differentiate from mom. So when a baby is born, according to object relations theory, they are completely one with their mom. So there's no different there. I don't know where I end and mom begins. It's like I am an object and I am one with mom, because that's how it was in the womb. And then when the baby's born, it starts to very slowly and in its own time take its own autonomy. And so 1s, 9s, and 8s had a sensitivity toward that process, according to this theory. So 8s, perhaps the story could have gone such as they were overly held or coddled or not held enough, and so there was this like jerk reaction of like needing their own independence. 9s, there was this type of like sadness of needing to be held perhaps even more than they were, or if they were like left too long away and they were like, wow, well, like I'm not getting like my bodily needs met. And then type 1s, there's this connection toward holding of they felt like they didn't have control over their bodies. So someone was always kind of changing their diaper at a certain time or waking them up or saying, hey, this is it. And so now they're like, well, there's outside forces that control my body. My body isn't teaching me, but these outside forces are teaching my body. And then as this theory develops, the child starts getting a little older. And if anybody has been around a 2-year-old or going on to 3 and 4, they can be runners. And so they look at their parents or their parent figures and they say, okay, how far can I go until this person is going to pay attention to me or run after me? And so 7s, 6s, and 5s dealt with that in their own way, because they had a sensitivity toward the phase of safety, feeling safe. They didn't feel safe is essentially what happened. So 5s dealt with not feeling safe. Maybe like you're walking on the playground and you look back and you're like, okay, is my mom or dad still looking at me? Okay, they are. I'm going to go a little farther. And I look back. And maybe depending on what's going on there, they had this sensitivity toward mom or dad wasn't looking or paying attention or maybe talking to another parent. And I think that we're born to a certain sensitivity. That's why I'm using that language to like kind of become that type, because sometimes people hear this and they're like, oh yeah, my parents definitely. And other times like, I don't really know. Like I had really great parents. And this theory holds up, like even if you had really great parents, and parents are just doing the best that they can. But 5s had that sensitivity, and the way that they coped with not feeling safe was, okay, well, I'm going to create safety in my own head. And I'm going to gather information to keep me safe, and I'm going to become competent in that way. And they have their own inner worlds. 6s, the way that they dealt with not feeling safe was, again, overdoing their head center by saying, well, you know what, I'm going to keep myself this safe. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to think through every possible scenario and come up with a solution for it before it happens. So their minds are always racing. And 7s too, their minds are always racing. And the way that they dealt with this safety piece was they were like, well, no one's paying attention and that's okay. I will just take care of myself and have a good time. And hey, everybody, let's come together and let's play pirates. Like I'll be the captain, you'll be this, you'll be that. And it's this fantasy that they're creating using their head center. And then mirroring. So the end of this theory talks about children getting to that early preschool phase and 4 or 5 years old, and they need people to mirror back. So I really like hold up a mirror and they need someone to say, Ashlee, good job. Like, I see you. Like, you made this beautiful drawing and you went down the slide, and I see you. And I need you to repeat back exactly what it is you see in me. And twos, threes, and fours had a sensitivity toward this phase. And now they're searching for it in their adult life. Like, please smear me. Tell me what you see. And then you can kind of start to see, I see maybe some even light bulbs coming on, like how this shaped your dominant Enneagram type, or like these other dominant Enneagram types. It's this coping strategy toward these sensitivities that might have happened in early life. So the ways that twos dealt with not being seen is they're like, well, okay, I'm going to see other people. And hopefully that will come back one day. The ways that threes dealt with not being seen is, oh, I'm going to be incredible. I am going to like the who people look at are the people who are the most successful and at the top. And that looks different for every three. Like, what does the most successful look like? But people look at those people. It's like the way they feel seen. And the ways fours dealt with that is being like, oh, what a tremendous grief that you didn't see me. Well, I'm going to find eccentric and expressive ways to communicate how unique I am in the world, and then they'll see me. And so that ends this idea of these intelligence centers and these subphases. So what does that look like now when we're talking about, whoa, Ashlee, how do we apply this like big theory into our organizations? Well, there are communication practices that you can use around those three subphases of mirroring, safety, and holding. And so body centers, it's really important to be physically present with them. So I am looking at you, my camera's on, my shoulders are back. I'm not crossing my arms. I'm not turning this way. I had someone in a workshop recently saying that as a body center, they know when someone's on Slack. Maybe other types can also identify this, or like if you're typing and you're not physically there, they're like, oh, I know. And my body's mad because my body's here and your body's not here and it needs to be here. And there's some serious challenges with this pandemic. I think that it's been a blessing for a lot of personalities and for even like more silent head types to show their more quirky one-liners and Zoom chat and things like that. But also there's this intuition that body types don't have access to, that gets lost over Zoom. They need those like in-person annual meetings, or an opportunity to actually like physically be near be near their team. And there's ways that you can do that. Like you can give people like a high five, or like even using Zoom, or inviting people to stretch in the middle of a meeting, or saying like, hey, how's your body today? And like incorporating that into some of your rhythms and practices. And then heart types. What do heart types need? Heart types need to talk about their feelings. Yes, even threes. And space. They need space, and they need you to not fix them. And they need you to use the language that they use and repeat back what they're saying. Oh, you just said this. I'm like, yes, that's what I just said. And you're like, yes, I know, because I just repeated back what exactly you just said. And they need that mirroring and that empathy. They love giving them empathy or feeling words, asking them how they're feeling. And then remember not to fix them. So they might share with you things that are emotionally like how they're feeling or more troubling. And it's really important to be like, yeah, okay. Yeah, what do you want to do about that? Or anything else that you want to share. And to not fix heart types. Heart types hate being fixed, even if they don't show it. And then head centers. So ways that we can communicate with head centers. We can be very specific using our language, provide a lot of context and clarity. Yes, even for sevens need more story, and they need to be attached to a story. And be like swayed or persuaded in the sense of like, okay, this is why we're doing what we're doing. But it's again using being specific and creative in how you use your language and connecting with them through this like mental acuity. And even going back to the body, I've heard it said that head types, it was actually an Enneagram author, Richard Rohr. He was saying like they use their eyes a lot, like communicating like with their eyes and like like have your eyes open when communicating with them. And I thought that was interesting because even like, technically, right, that's where our brain is, like being like a head center. Um, and the last thing too, I want to hop back to heart types because one thing I forgot that is very unique to heart types. I forget it because that's a blind spot for me. I'm dominant in type 4. Is heart types need a lot of those nonverbals. So the mm, yeah, oh my gosh. It's like a lot of this like empathy language. And it might be hard for some people, especially if you're a head type, for instance. And there was a 1-to-1-9 that I worked really closely with. He was a spiritual director, and he said that learning about the intelligence centers were so helpful for him because he goes, I would always get so annoyed in meetings when people on my team would be making these noises in between someone sharing. And it's just like, can you be quiet? Like, I'm trying to listen. And so these theories are really interesting because it teaches us to get out of our preference and possibly engage with another type of intelligence center and communication style. Okay, hi there. We paused the recording to have the dialogue space just be more intimate and safe. And the last thing I just want to share is if you do plan to use the Enneagram, here are a couple of things that could be helpful for you. So, self-reflection, really, this tool is about spending time alone and getting to know yourself. Um, Perhaps you have a community that you feel safe with and allow yourself to be more known using the Enneagram and your type with your close relationships. So that could be your team, that could be your family, different communities that you're a part of. And then find a guide. If you feel like you've gotten as far as you could on your own, consider finding a coach or a counselor or someone who is well trained in the Enneagram. There's a lot of Enneagram coaches, but really ask where they got their training, and not just that they love the Enneagram, but have them work with you and challenge you around getting away from your ego into that true path of who you are. And then lastly, keep studying. It's a really intricate and interesting tool, and there's a lot to intake. And even those who have known about it for decades, the knowledge field is constantly expanding around the Enneagram. So I share some of my favorite resources on Sway Leadership's blog, and you're welcome to follow along. Also, the Enneaflip, which is a tool for a more emotionally intelligent workplace. If you're looking to implement the Enneagram, one of the things we hear a lot is, well, okay, we taught the team the Enneagram. Maybe you had Sway come in and do a team workshop, or you taught it yourself, or you had everybody read a book and you did book study. It's like, well, how do we keep on using this? And the Enneaflip is a tool where you can actually have it on your desk and you can quickly access what your type is and then whatever it is, the type of someone else, and then compare them together with, it's a side-by-side resource. So that could be helpful. Our next Sway skills is it's the next fourth to Thursday of the month. They're from 12 to 1 Pacific time, Pacific Standard Time each month. And we're actually going to do a study on body types. So we're going to dive into 8s, 9s, and 1s and then have a dialogue. So I hope to see you there. And thank you all for attended and who are watching this workshop. And then for those of you who couldn't attend, we hope that you're able to attend the next one. Have a good rest of your week.